Hello, and thank you ever so much for taking the time to come and see this talk today. My name is Kate Dawkins. I am the creative director and founder of Self-Named Studio. And we are an award-winning creative studio, little studio, and we design, direct, and deliver distinctive visual content for live experiences. Simple as that. And we do this by partnering with creative agencies, live experience agencies, global brands, and very importantly, technology specialists. And we do this because we believe in beautiful crafted content, we believe in applying logic to the problem and passion to the solution, and we believe in delivering sort of spectacular moments. This is our studio. Just give you a little background to us. This is our studio in East London. We have these two, so I'd say it's a little bit like Amsterdam, but it's not at all. And this is some of our work. So we've worked with YouTube, worked with Elton John for his live show, Red Piano Show in Las Vegas, MTV Music Awards, live performance shows like Fast and Furious Live, Intermiss Me on Ice, Opera Pop, very catchy title, that one. And probably most famous for the London 2012 opening and closing Olympic ceremonies. But a lot of our work is brand events. So we've worked with Adidas, we've worked with Cisco, we've worked with Land Rover. We do a lot of vehicle launches. And these are all to name a few. So that's a sort of little bit of our background. Our work is very much about design, craft, and passion. Craft being probably the one word there that's holding it all together. And I'm standing here today because I have been asked to talk about Passchendaele. Passchendaele centenary event even. It was 100 years since the end of this war. It was known as the Third Battle of Ypres, and it was a battle that I must confess I knew absolutely nothing about when I started. Now I know a great deal. But first of all, I want to talk about the pitch and the project. And I couldn't start this without saying that this was not our pitch. This pitch came into Creative Technology, two of which are sat over there. And we got a phone call to say, we can do this, we've got the technology to do this, but we haven't got the ability to do content. Would you like to come on board and do that part of it? I think that's safe to say. So that's what we did. And I thank you guys for making that phone call. This is our building, and just to go back to sort of what was going to happen, this was going to be an evening of multimedia spectacular, of projection, live performance, musical events. The project was commissioned by the DCMS and the BBC, and very importantly, this was a forward-thinking event. It wasn't a sort of, I'd say, doom and gloom remembrance event. This was very much about the youth and a younger contemporary audience understanding about this particular battle, so that we could go forward and everybody would remember it. And one thing about this building, this is the Cloth Hall in the Market Square in Ypres. This is an old picture of the building, and this is a picture of it at the end of World War I. So you can see the absolute desolation, which made it so important that this was our building for the projection, not just any old building. However, that did add its huge problems, as you can see. We couldn't get straight onto it. The guys will contest to that. As you can see, the awkward area where all the audience would be, which is a car park, and that added all manner of issues. So, Jim, sort of architecturally, we were faced with a lot of problems. It's incredibly ornate, as a building of its time would be. So we had issues with sort of windows, opening geometry, clock tower, clock face, the spires, the two ends of the building weren't the same design. We had all sort of structured sections and these sort of end columns. So everything was going on with this building. It was not flat. So, beginning of the pitch. once I was asked to join the team to do this, I launched myself into the Imperial War Museum. As I said, knew nothing about it. And an amazing place to go. The Imperial War Museum in London had an incredible amount of artifacts and information and everything you could want to understand this particular battle, including these beautiful photographs by war photographer Frank Hurley. I think this is the most famous one. Sorry, it's slightly out of focus, but it's you know, you can see the desolation of the sort of ground during this time. I mean, this battle is famous for the mud, the rain and the mud. The rains came early. The shelling had damaged the drainage systems. The whole place flooded. That then dried and became mud, and it was actually one of the causes of so much death to both horses and men, let alone the sort of battle that was ensuing. So I just want to go a bit into the creative approach, because no one ever gets to hear this side of it. They just get to look at nice pictures on the website. The important things that we went in with this pitch were 5 things. There was a constant connection between the live performance and the projection. This is a bloody great building with some small people on a stage, and the last thing that could happen was that we engulfed these people. So there was a delicacy that was needed. We wanted to get away from normal building projection. I think as projection has grown up, there is less sort of the fun things that started when projection happened, like snakes going through windows and buildings crumbling and falling down. And this was not one of those moments anyway, but we wanted to move away from that. We needed to be sympathetic to the 8,000 people who were there in front of the building on the night, but this was going to be broadcast live, and so that the people at home had to experience as much enjoyment of this event as the people there. This was, although we were having theatrical moments, this was very much about portraying a historical factor. So although there was elements of theatre, we had to make sure that that was very much grounded in reality. And the final one, like any show, is you want highs and lows, large and small, otherwise you're just going to blast people for an hour and they're not going to know what they're looking at. So just to sum it up, sensitive, touching, beautiful, respectful, thought-provoking, the rest is there, and we didn't want it to be gimmicky, inappropriate, throwaway, or meaningless. One of the things I put in the pitch document, which apparently I found out afterwards, which was one of the reasons we won this pitch, which is a bit strange. I went and found this passage about the Battle of Passchendaele, and I broke it down into what was the main issues and the main factors of this war. And I was told afterwards that the mere fact of doing this and that I understood what we were up against was one of the reasons we won it, not any of the visuals, which was quite funny. So just quickly, I'm going to go through things that are important to me when I'm designing for these kind of things. First thing is perspective and scale. Love the use of putting massive, great things on buildings. I think it's because I'm a graphic designer that moved into motion graphics and then broadcast. So I haven't actually worked out how to scale things up for big buildings, so just make everything giant. But this was one of the visuals we had. I'm all for not using the whole building. I sort of feel that you can use just part of a building. And why not have a sort of beautiful image of a soldier, just obviously a soldier, a distressed soldier in this instant, on the building. Another thing was poetry and letters and photos. We were going to have a lot of this to deal with. So what did we do there? How did we look at this? So these were all sort of mood imagery we were pulling in. You know, looking at how concrete poetry, you know, could we put large bits of type on the building? You know, how could we treat the letters and you know, the photos that we got, archive photos, because, you know, without just putting a picture on the building. And also archive imagery, archive footage, you know, how are we going to deal with that to make that sort of interesting and not just the building becoming a sort of canvas? So this is one of the pitch images. It's Harry Patch, who was the last remaining veteran. Unfortunately, has now passed away, but he was going to be speaking and how we were going to deal with the building. This is what we actually did. She says.
Now, Passchendaele, when I knew it, was flat. Everything was blown to pieces.
On that morning, the 31st of July, we were told we were going over the top. The terrain was very, very difficult. Shell holes, some of them you could drop a house in.
That's a BBC broadcast, I don't know why it cuts there. But, you know, you can see, I mean, we were also sort of having to, I think after a while, we realized we could only really use the sort of right-hand side of the building and the clock tower because of where everybody was. Another thing, of course, as I said, we were supporting live performance. We weren't sort of, it wasn't just about the projection all the time, so we sort of turned to theatre to sort of see how that was sort of used and what exciting things we could do. I tried this as a visual, didn't think it worked on the time. And one thing I love is abstracts and also the sort of simplicity of, again, it's back to that not using the whole building. Why do you have to cover it in everything when you can just cover it in something simple? As I said, mud, we were asked to portray mud. That was going to be a very difficult one, but of course you can see there's beautiful ways of doing it, beautiful ways of creating emotion on something like this. This is one of my favorite visuals that we actually took through, and again, as I say, simplicity of light, of a simple image, and just creating something very simple. But I was talking about the red line for Red Cross. When we're talking about the sort of medical aspects of this, why can't we just have a red line? So we did. We also were doing live feed onto this building at the same time, just to add a little bit more complication. And I found this image, and I love this image. This is an image that took through for most things, and it was this image of sort of looking out, and I started thinking about being inside the building, looking out of the building. And I thought, wow, those windows are very much like the windows in the building. So again, for the pitch, I came up with this idea. And I'm going to stand here now, and the CT are probably going to go, but I completely forgot when I went into this pitch that we'd never done a building projection. And the client didn't know we'd never done a building projection, and I didn't know whether we could even pull this off. But I always used to say, never let the truth get in the way of a good pitch. So we carried on with this idea, as promised, and brilliantly managed to pull it off, which was a bit of a whew moment. Going back to the sort of slightly gimmicky things, we were asked to bring the building down, destroy the building. Of course, I could see the reasons why we'd been asked to do this, but there was an audible groan of, really, you want us to destroy the building? So we were trying to find ways of doing this, you know, probably artfully, rather than sort of, just sort of slamming it down. And then weirdly, I found on Vimeo that someone had modeled, I don't know if you can see in the bottom right-hand corner, it says 1912, all the way up to 2012. Someone had modeled the destruction of the building all the way up to that, which was both bizarre and like supremely helpful in our quest to try and pull this off. This is one of the images from it. We had a moment where, I don't know if anyone knew, there was a devastating disaster in London in a tower called Grenfell, which burnt down, killing a huge amount of people. And this happened just before this event. So at the very last minute, we had to redo this to make sure it wasn't on fire and that we were being sympathetic to the people watching in the UK. So that was a whole sort of last-minute remodeling going on. Technical, I'm not going to go into this because I am not a technical person, but I think without mentioning it, that it doesn't make a huge amount of sense. But in a guerrilla little bit of on-site, seeing if this is going to work, the guys went over with projectors and waited for the lights to go off on the building and shone some images onto it, which I thought was absolutely spectacular, considering we didn't know this was going to work. Obviously, all projection starts with a LiDAR scan, a 3D model. This isn't probably one of the best images I've got, but this model is stunning. It's almost as beautiful, the building, in its own right. Equally is our UV map. If I could blow this up, the detail on this is absolutely stunning. This was the side. We were also projecting on the front and the side, just for a bit of fun. I like the bit this says, not to be used for the show. We obviously received another one after this, but you know, this is what we were working on, and subsequently, this is our animations plotted back onto that. and wrapped back around the building. When I do these talks, I always say, it sounds really easy, doesn't it? I'm sure the guys over there would testify that it's not in the slightest bit easy, and I'm just making it sound so. We used two ways of visualizing it. It was so important in this instance. One was some software called Previs, which we were using in-house. But as amazing as this software is, and it's real-time software, it's still being looked at on a 27-inch iMac. You still can't really see the details. I mean, you can zoom in, but it's still not giving you what you want. So the guys set up in CT the ability for me to be able to see it with VR, and that was just absolutely spectacular. I'm not a huge fan of VR. I'm probably going to get booed off the stage in a minute. But it was incredible. But when you do anything outside, your time, getting time, your ability to rehearse is so short. Plus, you've really got that ability to, well, the sort of people don't want it to be seen. You're in a public space, and you've got loads of people looking at what's going to happen in 2 nights. So what we were able to do is go through everything and be able to see whether there was things not working, where there was alignment issues, where there was just problems, and be able to fix them before we went. Just going to run through some sequences quickly. What I also love is the fact that, it's very easy on websites to make our work look absolutely stunning, and it's very easy for me to stand here and make everything I do sound amazing. So I'm going to tell you about one of the sequences that didn't work. But before that, this is just the sort of run of the show. You can see the grey area was the point where it wasn't dark enough to start projecting. You can also see the different colours are where we had projection moments, which was just the building, and other moments, like the pink one there, where we were supporting live performance. You can see the sort of highs and lows of this. I like to work out a show by drawing every sequence in line, just to see what's going on, so I can sort of get a view of it. So that's the show on 2 pages. Just done. And this was an email from our client after the event, and you don't need to read it all. There were wonderful things in there, like Sunday night was just spectacular and special, an indescribable triumph never to be repeated. There were also things in there, like there were moments last week when, to be honest, I thought we might have bitten off more than we could chew. I think we were all thinking the same thing. I don't think you can stand here on stage with a project as beautiful as this and know that you haven't pushed everything to the edge where it's just about to break. I think we all felt like that, both design-wise, both technology. It all came together, but there were a few moments we were all like, wow, we really are pushing everything here. Talbot House. Just going to briefly go into the history of Talbot House. Talbot House was a refuge for the soldiers. It was outside of the battle zone, and it was started by the army chaplain and a guy called Chubby Clayton. And it was everybody of any rank could go, and you left your rank at the door. It really was a refuge, beautiful house, place to relax, place to put notices to find your friends, stunning gardens. We were going to recreate this house. So I launched into instantly thinking, Doll's House. Great, we've got a massive building. Doll's House would be a really good idea. I can do every room in this. Started looking at Doll's Houses. One of our animators had done this, so I was like, great, this looks good. We can sort of do this. So I started looking at it as a design. How can we put rooms into this building that represent the rooms? Then I started using images actually from the venue, from a recce. How do we create depth with those? And I saw this image, and I thought, oh, yeah, no, this looks like a sort of, as if I like point of view, I'm walking around this. So I started doing these tests, these sort of stop motion tests of going round. I thought, oh, this might work. So we went over and we did a shoot, and we did the same thing. We thought, oh, we can put these in these rooms. And it's going to look great, and it's going to look fantastic. It's been really interesting. No one's going to have seen this before. There was another one that was going to run up the clock tower, up the main bit, that would run all the way upstairs through this house. It didn't work. We ended up changing it on site. It just was too complicated for the building. It was an over-ambitious idea. I'll put it in my back pocket for something slightly less complex, but the next one I want to talk about is a project called Letter to Lizzie. This is Jack Mudd, Colonel Jack Mudd, and his wife, Lizzie. What was beautiful about this project is having the actual material of the real people. This wasn't made up. These were all the beautiful things. This is the letter. This is what we got to work with. It was on some see-through paper that you couldn't actually use. But what was beautiful was we also got this, and this was a flower that he pressed into his notebook and kept in his pocket the whole time he was at war. And it was just stunning to be able to receive these sort of beautiful things. And this was something I found, is a bit of embroidery, and I thought, oh, this is beautiful, because it's like the rings of the people all joined together, because they're like a family, and we had pictures of his kids, and there's all this thing about him wanting to come home. And then, sadly, he didn't come home. He was killed at war. This is the letter on the right-hand side, the official letter of death. So we did this sequence. This is some of the style frames. You can see that we're going through them. We moved through it and then had this moment of him passing, which we did in a lot more sort of calmer way. As you can see, the influence of this from the original frame I had. Terrible moment. Helen Mirren. I hope you all know who Helen Mirren is, doing her best on the stage to evoke the sort of emotion in this. This was one of the animations. This is the woman looking for her husband, and then she finds out that he's died, and she falls to her knees. Now, I was standing with our team and my husband on site, and this is the point where I said to my husband, "That's Pete in a dress." To which he nearly spat his beer out, and it was the most inappropriate moment ever in something that emotionally charged to tell a stupid story like that. So that's just a lesson from me not to do that. And finally, we were tasked with the remembrance moment. As I said, it wasn't going to be about poppies, but this was a remembrance moment. This was the remembrance part, so I thought, well, let's have a look at that. It's about all the people who lost their lives, all the names of those people. So we started thinking, oh, look, those poppies fit really well in that building. And I remember when we presented this, one of the clients from DCMS said, "I hate it," which is, I'm not sure. So that was good. That was going really well at that point. So this was all sort of put away. All of this was thrown away. But this is an amazing Japanese artist, Yayoi, and she does this beautiful thing. This was an infinity room, and I was looking at it, I was thinking, oh, how beautiful that is. It sort of feels like there's sort of souls ascending through there. Hence, I sort of put it on the building and thought, oh, this might work. And along with that quote at the beginning, this is what won us the pitch. It just was the most beautiful moment. We were coming out of putting massive great type onto the building. We had the word Passchendaele. The word Passchendaele was going to come down into the single line, and then it was going to break up into these things. That "I died in hell," they called it Passchendaele, is a famous quote. So this is what it looked like. Oh, no, that's not what it looked like. So as you can see, an incredibly powerfully charged moment for the end, this end piece, but also what was accompanying that were the soldiers marching through that, who then went on to march through Menin Gate, as the soldiers did during battle. And this is an artist I'd seen recently, Anthony McCall, and I just thought, oh God, how beautiful, this sort of like, walking into the light. So we sort of designed these sort of frames of this final moment. The BBC were going live to the soldiers marching through Menin Gate, and we had to have something on the building. So we decided to sort of have this moment where this was it. It was going to go to black after this. We were having the soldiers going through. And so one of our animators dressed up in correct, may I add, very correct replica soldier uniform, and on the hottest day in summer in the UK, I know that doesn't sound like it can get very hot, but it did that day, was in a full wool suit doing a blue screen shoot in his living room for the purpose of us. We also found out that day that he can't march at all, and I had to keep showing pictures to our client, who was with, like, I think the head of the army on that day, and he kept saying, no, no. So we were like, right, we won't have marching. Marching's not going to happen. So, you know, this is the sort of coming together of this. Anyone who thinks these jobs are glamorous, I'm sure they know they don't. The porter cabin wasn't large enough for me to get in. Neither did anyone want me in the porter cabin. So I was outside in the rain, which was fine. This is amazing Tom Burford from CT. I know there's people here who are quite happy and normally see this amount of cabling. This still blows my mind years later that I don't know where they start with the first cable or where the last one goes in. So thank you for getting the stuff on the building. So just a little bit about all of that sort of side of it. There were 58 projectors, 7 towers, and 133,632,000 pixels on the building. And now I'm just going to literally show you a couple of minutes to show you a film which will cover everything I've forgotten to say.
On the 30th of July 2017, thousands gathered in Ypres Market Square in Belgium to commemorate the centenary of Passchendaele, the Third Battle of Ypres. The story of this battle was told in a spectacular show of projection mapping, live theatre and musical performances, with the formidable Cloth Hall acting as a dramatic and poignant backdrop for the proceedings. The event aimed to communicate to a contemporary audience the historic significance of this particular battle. We were responsible for the design, animation and delivery of the projection content, and with our canvas standing at 125 metres by 70 metres, it wasn't an easy job. To add to that, our main viewing point was 3/4 onto the building, so as well as having to deal with this complex angle, we also had to overcome the ornate and uneven surface of the building. Pre-visualisation was vital to the project throughout, so we used specialist software and VR, which allowed us to quickly review our designs and animations on a model of the building. Design, composition and craft stands at the heart of our studio. We wanted to make sure that each story had its own voice and set the right sensitive tone to establish show flow and visual storytelling, but with a modern aesthetic. We had incredible access to archive footage of the veterans, as well as photographs of the soldiers and their families. Every piece of handwriting was taken directly from the soldiers' original letters, as authenticity for us was paramount to this project. Lighter moments came in the form of theatre and live performance, but one of the most powerful moments of the event was the soldiers in the windows, reflecting just how many soldiers had marched through Menin Gate, never to return. Alongside the 8,000 guests, it was broadcast and watched live by an audience of 1.5 million. Projects like this just don't come along very often. It was truly an honour and a huge sense of pride for our small studio to have been selected and to work on such a remarkable and poignant event.
So yes, that's the project, and I think just to finish up, you know, after all of that, one of the reasons I'm standing here today, because I was invited by AV Magazine, because we were the winner of the Broadcast Media Project of the Year and nominated for the Live Event of the Year. But I was saying to the guys from CT before we came, we were nominated for quite a few other projects, and the project itself has taken all of those awards in 1 year. I didn't enter all of them. I'm not some mad award chaser. We are just, you know, flabbergasted by the outcome of it. It's a stunning project. It deserved everything it got. And I can't say how proud I am to have worked with CT on such an amazing project. But just to sort of, you know, finish off, we were then invited to do the centenary of the Festival of Remembrance, again with CT. And amazing four-sided projection gauze in the Royal Albert Hall. You know, similar footage, how do you do it? How do you start sort of working again on something that's sort of similar but with a different sort of resonance? So it was incredible to be able to take that project forward and work on something that's a little bit smaller, but nonetheless as beautiful. So on that note, I'd just like to say thank you for coming and listening. And yeah, drop me a line if you want to ask anything. Thank you.